For those of you who haven't said hello, do say hello, and you already have ensured your screen name is your name. And please ask questions. So a key thing of this session is we want it to be a conversation. We have two wonderful panelists, but you are also a part of this. We are watching, this is webinar mode, so you can't actually turn your camera on to talk to us, but please do ask questions in the Q&A, and we'll either address them while we're having a conversation, but if while Lucy and Naomi are presenting, you can't generally see the chat very easily with slides, so we'll wait until they finish. But please make this a conversation. We're going to ask each other questions. It's, this is a conversation we want to have, and it's the second of the series of modern slavery in Sussex that I'm hosting, and it's when wanting to make a difference isn't enough. What are the challenges facing organisations wanting to do good? And this conversation moves on from a discussion we had last year. So if you've missed any of the anti-modern slavery conversation, please do become a member of our Possibility Club, where all of the videos from those are posted, but also conversations and links and resources. There's a wealth of conversation happening in the Possibility Club, which isn't always possible conversation. And this is moving on from there, from exploring what modern slavery looks like in Sussex. And we're going to be discussing today the challenges facing local organisations operating in the area, and providing space for reflecting on how working together they can be overcome. And what I loved about the first one was how constructive this conversation is. It's a very difficult topic, but if you missed the last one with looking at how the church can address this, I found it really uplifting, and we even had a little sort of prayer moment at the end of it. I'm not from a religious background, but I felt so empowered at the end of it that I could do something about this, where I could start the conversation, or I could look out for the signs, which maybe I didn't even know where to start on this topic. So this is an education for me as well, and it's wonderful. And this whole project is funded by the University of Sussex and the Economic and Social Research Council to help translate academic knowledge into action. The activity is facilitated by Always Possible, a unique consultancy looking at 21st century problems solving through connected conversations. And my name is Lucy Payne, and I'm a member of the Always Possible team, and my role here is really the easy one, to host these wonderful conversations and basically inspire more conversations. And if we all go away from this wanting to get involved, wanting to help out, I feel like I've done my job. And earlier webinars talked about the scale of modern slavery across the world and within the UK. And behind every number is a human being, someone who's been exploited through the use of coercion. Psychological and physical traumas are experienced by those who've survived, and often they are left broken, unable to build trust with others, feeling hopeless and alone in the world. And this webinar is going to focus on the challenges facing local organisations operating in the area and provide the spaces so reflecting for how we can overcome these. And so that's enough of the background. What I'd like to do is introduce my panel, which is Lucy and Naomi. And Lucy, can I come to you first?
Yeah, hello. What do you want to know? Shall I just do an intro to myself, myself?
Yes, please.
Yeah, so I'm the co-founder and charity manager at Bramber Bakehouse, and we provide baking skills, wellbeing support, and life skills for female survivors of human trafficking across Sussex and South East.
Wonderful. And Naomi, a brief overview, because obviously we're both going to present a bit more, but a bit of a taster of what you do as well.
So I'm Naomi Partridge. I'm a co-founder and director of Holos Kombucha. So we are a kombucha brand. We brew and sell kombucha around the UK, and we have a social purpose of providing employment for survivors of slavery in the UK.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Now, Lucy, over to you to present. What both of our panelists are going to do is present sort of 5-10 minutes for a bit of background and context. And I say, please do ask questions while we talk. But we wanted to give you enough information to be able to delve further into what Lucy and Naomi do.
Lovely. Can everyone see that?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Brilliant. Okay. Hi. So yeah, my name is Lucy. I work for Bramber Bakehouse. And as I said, we work primarily with female survivors of human trafficking across Sussex and South East. There's a few ways that we do this. So our main aim really is to make sure that women who are survivors experience confidence, have the knowledge and the skills that they need to be able to move forward and have a positive future. So these are the 3 sort of key points that we drill home. We want to promote the general health and wellbeing of survivors, provide specific support to develop life and vocational skills, and provide tailored support to promote independence. It's a little bit of a different way of doing it here, because we focus on baking sort of the centre of our care, and we use it as a form of therapy for women to learn a variety of baking skills and build community around that. And other wellbeing and life skills that come alongside that. So in addition to that, we have some progression pathways that we're working on at the moment, but some that are in place as well. So here's a list of some of the things. I can give a bit of an overview of what those look like. So it's really important for us that we're providing longer term care for survivors. They're not potentially receiving that care through statutory organisations. So we sort of plug the gap, if you like. So we provide a number of peer-to-peer support groups, and we're just starting to work on that a little bit more. So that's mainly focused around well-being, mental health support, understanding perhaps what you've been through, where you're going to, alongside other people that have had like-minded experiences too. We also provide a very small number of volunteering opportunities within Bramber. So the way that we work is we are a charity, but we're looking to go down the more social enterprise route and have a bakery where we can provide more volunteering and more employment opportunities for survivors that come through our programs. So we started to do that in a very small way, just to sort of pilot it. The other thing that we're looking to develop is volunteering and employment opportunities through trusted organisations. That might be other charities, it might be local businesses, just trying to get women onto a path where they can move forward with their futures based on all the skills that they've learned with us. We have a number of community gatherings, and then we're also working on exciting mentoring scheme at the moment, which will be volunteer-led, so mentors matched with mentees over a period of a year, meeting once a week to empower the mentee, but also to provide them with support once they start to work on goals and certain things they might want to fulfill, how that mentor can support them with that. So we've seen great success. We've been running for about 7 years now, and we've had over 50 women come through the programme. I thought it would just be really good to share some of these stats with you. I'm not going to read them out, you can see them on the screen there. But yeah, we've just seen incredible transformation, really, women coming together, supporting each other, being in community, learning skills and developing a plan for their future. And we're really proud of the work that we've done so far. In the interest of sharing data, I just thought it'd be helpful to see an overview of up until last year, the kinds of women that we're working with, and a bit of a breakdown. So you can see there that 42% of the women that we support have experienced sexual exploitation, 68% have experienced displacement, and over 60% are asylum seekers, which for us is a massive challenge because lots of them don't have the right to work. So how do we provide them with the skills and the confidence and the resources that they need whilst they're waiting for that status to change? You can see on the far right hand side there, sorry, you're kind of in the way of my map, that 63% of referrals that come to us come from London, and then 35% in the southeast, including Sussex in that, obviously. So we cover quite a wide area. We're really proud that we've worked with over 18 different nationalities. You can see a sort of a bit of a picture of where they're coming through there. Yeah, so that's sort of an overview. Should I just go straight into talking about the challenges, Lucy, and sort of set a bit of a conversation going? Yeah, so I was having a little think about the challenges for us. We are a very small charity, and we've grown very organically, and over the past 7 years, these are the sort of things that we've seen as challenges, particularly within the area that we're working in Sussex. As you'll see from the previous slide, most of the women that we're supporting come from outside of Sussex. There's a few challenges that come along with that. It can be very costly for us. So at the moment, we want to make sure that we remove as many barriers as possible for the women that we support. As a result of that, we cover the cost of travel, which, as you can imagine, is very expensive, national rail these days. But we think it's a really important thing for us to do. And as we start to develop, we are hoping to become more localised and have hubs that sort of go out from there, so we can keep those costs down. But it is a challenge. The second difficulty for us around that is it can be quite difficult to forge community. That for us is one of our main values. Community is at the core of what we do. With women travelling to lots of different locations, we're actually based in Brighton at the moment, but it doesn't allow for opportunities for women to drop in because they're travelling a long distance. They have very limited resources and money available to them. So we want to, become a bit more localised, but then have those regional hubs in key areas that might have a higher uptake of female survivors and need support like ours. Lastly, it can be quite difficult to signpost women to local services. So we very much stay in our lane, but we work with other organisations who are providing great services in addition to what we're doing. That can be quite difficult if we're working, say, with a woman that's based in London and we're in Brighton, to then signpost them to local organisations and also trusted organisations. So that is a little bit of a challenge. Having said that, with most women coming from outside of Sussex, we're really proud that our retention rate is really great. Last year it was 92% of women that came on the course stayed on the course and graduated at the end, and that just shows sort of the resilience and the drive that they've got to be able to make the changes that they need to. The second challenge that I just wanted to touch on is I think the lack of data that is available on the numbers of survivors living in Sussex. I'm sure some of you are aware that the support that's offered in Sussex is quite limited in comparison to other areas like London or the north of England. For us specifically, it would be really great if we were able to capture the number of survivors, particularly female survivors who are living or receiving support in Sussex, and see how we can grow that network to support survivors support survivors further. I'm sure you'll all agree, because most of you are Sussex based, although moving to Scotland is a little bit different. But Sussex is a really beautiful area, particularly by the sea. And we personally at Bramber believe there's real power in survivors receiving support and care in such a beautiful environment. Hopefully others will agree with that. And the third challenge that we see is there's a limited knowledge of the public understanding what human trafficking looks like and what it is to be a survivor of human trafficking. We tend to see that people can be very empathetic, and that's great, but there tends to be this consensus of that doesn't happen here. And we really want to change that message. There's a lot of great organisations like Stop the Traffic and A21 that are doing great work to raise awareness of that. But I think there may be other opportunities for us to collaborate together and raise awareness of what the issues are and connect with people on a more localised level, so that they really understand that it could be on your doorstep. It is something that you still need to support us with. So that's sort of the challenges that I want to touch on. I'm sure that will provide some discussion, but any questions you've got, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you, Lucy. And we talked a little bit about that before we went live, didn't we, about the public education. And I think, Steph, you mentioned it's World Day Against Trafficking on Saturday. So we're trying to start this conversation, which is uncomfortable. It's just difficult, of looking at this is happening on our doorstep. You know, that modern slavery is, you know, we sometimes get a bit arrogant. You know, the politicians would have us believe that everything's perfect in this country, wouldn't they? But we won't really nice conversation to talk about policy, but we need to look beyond that and look at what we can do. So this is quite empowering. I want to get back to 7 years ago as to why you took the approach you have done and how this all got started.
It's always an interesting one to answer, because I've got a faith background. So for me, that was a huge reason that I wanted to start doing work that I'm doing. My friend had a similar sort of passion for, we just really cared about female equality and making sure that it was the things that were accessible for the privileged were also accessible for them. And that for us looked like working with survivors, particularly females, because we're female and we care about it, obviously, very passionate about it. And for us, it was really just starting to have those conversations with other people in the sector and saying, I mean, it seems crazy now, but at the time we were just like, we really want to do something about this. We think we have an idea. We think there's a gap for skills-based training for women. We think there's something around therapy of baking, that kind of thing. And we really just tested the waters. We were really lucky that we had a few organisations locally who trusted us to pilot that with us. And we partnered with Naomi when she was at Sophie Hayes Foundation. That was a huge success for us. And we just started to test the waters, really, had women referred to the programme, realised actually there was a real power in bringing women together and having that community aspect, but also them learning skills and feeling empowered to do more than perhaps what had happened to them before. That could be changed if somebody intervened in their lives. And so that for us was kind of the start of it. And it was quite a long road for us. I mean, that was a challenge, is that we were a team of volunteers. And it took a lot longer to do things than it would have if you were a team of paid staff, and that was our jobs. we all had full-time jobs alongside that. We all had families that we were raising. But at the start of last year, I came on team, and I've recruited 2 other women who are fantastic. So we've started to build that, and now we've got the momentum going. It's how we start to grow and to be able to impact more women across South East, really.
I was going to challenge you on the language you used there about that it was lucky at the beginning. You built those relationships. I want to slap people when they say it's like you worked hard to your credibility, your passion.
Yeah, I guess at the time though, we didn't have any credibility. You know, all we had was the passion that we had,
which was enough for people to want to invest in you. You know, there was obviously, because people want to help, but they also want to work with somebody who they think, yes, I can invest in you time. It sounds like a little bit of money. Just to give you momentum, so your credibility will have shone through there, because somebody else with the same message wouldn't have had that experience.
Yeah.
I'm gonna big you up, and I love that you chose food. So why cake and cinnamon buns, and you know?
I mean, who doesn't love cake? I love cake, but I think also my dad is very entrepreneurial, and I think I've probably got that trait. And the idea of having a bakery that did more than just bake products but did good was really important to me. So that kind of set me on the path, really. And now it's kind of the vision. That's sort of where we're headed.
It made me think of the power of food, though. Food is always seen as a healer or conversation starter. We can all have a go at making a cake. It's quite balancing in terms of skills. We can all make something. Even if it's a very simple Victoria sponge. It's quite empowering.
Yeah, it is empowering, and I think it also provides a lot of opportunity for, it's almost a vehicle to people communicating, because you're using your hands, you're busy doing something else. You feel a bit more able to have open conversations that you might not have if you were sitting with someone having coffee. It might be a bit more intense, but it just allows this free flow of conversation and just openness to happen. As well as creating something at the end of it that you think, oh, I made that. You know, people's self-confidence shoots up, their self-esteem, their sense of value. They're giving it to their friends, they're showing it off to their caseworkers. You know, they're feeling empowered and motivated to do more as a result of that. So yeah, there is a real success there with that.
You're not being interviewed, as you say. There's so many environments where, you know, if they're sat in a meeting room like this, but talking, you know, it's a pressured sort of environment. Whereas you're making a cake, and also, as you said, not everybody has English as their first language, I'm assuming. So that there is a language of cake and creation and achievement, isn't it? And you get the smell in the room. It's a lovely journey. So I imagine it's probably quite emotional for some people, because they can just be free to be who they are and make what they like to make, and
and be creative within that as well. You know, you are learning to make a piece of bread or a focaccia, but actually you're being creative in that and using your unique set of skills to deliver that. And then we also spend time together having a meal. So aside from that, we sort of focus on well-being and life skills that would get you ready for work or education, but actually having a meal together in the middle of that is really important for us. Sit around the table and sort of release maybe some of the heavier stuff that we might have been talking about, and just have a chance to have a bit of fun, eat together, perhaps eat some of the bakes that we've made earlier in the day, because it's not all sweet. We do savoury as well. So yeah, just sort of a really good mix.
I like Richard, the language of cake is universal. It's very true. But also I was thinking breads, and if they're coming from the international women, they're all going to have their different home flavors and different breads. Everyone has their own version of bread, don't they? So whether it's flatbreads or whatever it may be, so you can teach each other. So it's a nice, it's a neutralizing of emotions or class, or
it's inclusive. And that's really important. You know, with 18 nationalities, you can't get away with not being inclusive. And we make sure that we are, you know, our program coordinator, she had this idea of creating this recipe book with all these different nationalities bringing their recipes together. And for our graduation, which we just had a graduation last week, we had a potluck, everyone brought their meal to the table, and we had dal, and we had Japanese pancakes and Korean pancakes, all these kind of things that people were bringing to the table. And it really was great to just have everyone together and bringing everything that they wanted. And yeah, you feel included, you feel valued, you feel like you belong. And that's the core things, isn't it, that help people to thrive, is that feeling of belonging and having a role, and feeling included in something. So yeah.
And it sounds like your evolution of funding, obviously now that you're a full-time member, has that been slow? And it sounds like it's very organic, slow and steady credibility, and getting on board more sponsors, more support?
Yeah, so 100% of our funding comes from grants, trusts and foundations, individual donors. I mean, you could say really we were very lucky in the early days, because we just had a huge amount of generosity from individual givers, particularly within the churches. And that enabled us to run really low cost programs when we were piloting it. It's only in the last sort of 12 to 18 months that we've really started to go quite hard on grants and have been quite successful in that, because I think my grant writer will often say it's quite a sexy project, which I'm not sure is the right phrase, but you know, it's that sort of bringing together of like baking and sort of encouragement and empowerment to help women to thrive is something that is perhaps quite innovative and lots of people may not have seen before, and they like the idea that they can perhaps get involved in the future with purchasing products and that being linked back into the work that we're doing. So I think it's very appealing, but something we want to do as we sort of shift forward in the next 12 or 18 months is start to diversify our income a bit. So we still think there's great power in having grants, of course it's brilliant, but what happens if that falls down? Is there ways that we can sell baked products that we're making to fund the charitable work that we're doing? I know that's something that Holos are doing really successfully as a social enterprise. So yeah, it's just sort of looking at ways that we can expand and become more sustainable, because for us it's, if there's that permanent home, that's kind of a metaphor for other women to have a permanent place, and they haven't got much security. You know, it's very it can be quite unstable for them, particularly with their if they haven't got a status to live here and they're waiting for their right to work. It can be quite destabilizing. So it's what can we do to become a really stable organisation so that they feel like they can come to us and we're not going to go anywhere, because that's really important for us.
And that financial stability, if you build that foundation, allows you to then go off and be more strategic and look at what else you could be doing. So a nice blend of both is absolutely the right way. But it's evolved, and you're probably doing well in grants because of your evolution being very organic. It's very proven. They like to see that, you know, everything, there's people who's helped you at the beginning, so sowing the seeds, is now getting the grants today because they can see the impact. And as you say, it is different, and it's heartwarming. We all love baking. You know, you mentioned the Bake-Off from Martha, and it is something that people all have very fond memories of any age. So I think you've really hooked into something. You've hit a really good nerve, really. And as you say, its growth is now your next challenge, I guess, is how you do take this and expand it.
Yeah, that's the biggest challenge is how do we do that? But we're sort of starting to bring more people around us that have got experience in growing that and in social enterprises, so that we can start to move forward a little bit.
Got a question from Chris here about the follow-up that you offer once your women have graduated.
Yeah, so we've just started working on what we call at the moment progression pathways. So there's a number of different things that will suit them depending on their circumstances. For those who have the right to work, it might be that they need support getting into either a voluntary role or a paid role. So we would start to work on them to develop a plan. How do they write a CV? How do they interview well? And how do they ultimately get that job and maintain it and stay in that? So that's one way. For a lot of the women that we work with, though, they don't have that right to work. So it's volunteering, it's extra sort of signposting to other organisations that they could learn new things, learn new skills, keeping coming back into Bramber, building community. And the other thing is our mentoring programme, which we're working on, we're hoping to roll out at the start of next year, is having that one-to-one support for a year. So they would meet once a week with their mentor and have that encourager, that befriender that keeps them on the straight and narrow, really.
Do you help the cohorts continue talking after they leave you as well?
Yeah, we're just trialing a WhatsApp group at the moment, which we'll see how it goes. We're hoping that's one way to do it, but they can also come back for any additional baking courses that we run, any newsletters that we send out them out like resources, training, opportunities, or just sort of a recipe to keep them going, because at the end they've been given sort of a baking kit to go away and be able to make that at home. So for them it's quite nice to have regular recipes that can keep them going and keep them sort of baking. So it really depends what the woman wants, and we're very much led by them. You know, it's a whole list really, but it's what do you want to do next and how can we help you to get there.
Again, that's lovely. Again, back to being empowering, isn't it? Not prescriptive. Lucy, thank you. I'm going to come to Naomi, and then we'll come back at the end of the three of us to finish off the conversation. But thank you, Naomi. Over to you.
Hello. Thank you so much for that, Lucy. I love your story. I think it's amazing and love what you guys do.
We need cake, don't we? This is what I want cake and kombucha. We should have had a picnic, shouldn't we? About this.
You could have had, yes, a very delicious picnic. And yeah, I love it. Cake and purpose. I mean, what better can get than that? So
absolutely.
I can share. I've got a bit of a presentation as well, just for ease, but really happy to take questions through you, Lucy, as things come up. Super. So as I mentioned earlier, I'm Naomi Partridge. I'm one of the co-founders of Holos Kombucha. So for those of you who've never even heard the word kombucha, kombucha is a sparkling chilled fermented tea. So it's basically a gut health drink. Really great alternative to alcohol or sugary drinks. And what we do as an organization is we are a business. So we're a business limited by shares. We run as a business and we brew and sell kombucha with the social purpose of providing employment for survivors of slavery. So I'm going to talk about both aspects, because actually those two aspects are what creates some of the tensions and challenges around how to make this kind of mission come into being. Really, is how do you run a competitive, fast growth, sometimes quite stressful business while providing a really safe, supportive environment for survivors of slavery. So it's those two things that the heart of the challenge kind of lies, I guess, and the heart of the opportunity as well. So a bit about our story. So our story actually tracks back nearly 10 years originally. So it tracks back to 2014, 2015, when I met my co-founder, Megan. There's 5 of us, but Megan and I were the first ones to meet on a plane to Cambodia, and we were going out there to work with survivors of slavery. And whilst we were out there, we met a woman on the streets who was being sexually exploited. And as part of our time there, we worked with her to help her get out of her situation and into work. And one of the key pieces to her breaking free and getting free in a lot of different ways in her life, and Megan worked with her for 6 months, so saw that real transformation, was actually her learning what she had as talents, what she had as skills, and actually applying them in making money and income that meant she could live a freer life in a more sustainable way. And that kind of really sparked, I guess, an idea in us, a passion for the wider purpose, the philanthropic purpose of business, which actually is nothing new. You know, people have pioneered this for years. A lot of the ancient brands, you know, that you have, Cadbury, the Quakers, Guinness, all of them actually started with a social purpose in mind, and often that was to do with employment and getting people out of poverty. So it's nothing new what we're trying to do, but we're just targeting it with this particular group. So it inspired us with this possibility of setting up a business one day. So zoom forward 3 years, and during that time, as Lucy referenced, I led a charity called Sophie Hayes Foundation, and we started an employability program for survivors of slavery. What I was noticing over and over again is that this support in terms of employability, CV building, confidence, absolutely critical, but we were struggling to find business environments that had that kind of sense of safety and support, where people could have that first opportunity into work. So some of these women had never worked before in a way that you could describe on a CV. So they were sort of starting from a completely blank slate. And we were struggling to find places that could do that first step. And that's where we came up with the idea of, hey, let's bring that idea back from Cambodia. Let's start to actually dream that up and consider what we could do. And we kind of gathered others around us, mainly through marriage. So we roped our husbands in, who actually are both full-time in Holos now, and without them it would be impossible. And also another friend, Christine, who's also been absolutely instrumental in it. So the 5 of us said, hey, let's do this. And we landed on kombucha, really quite honestly, through an exploration of, hey, what's kind of been successful over in other countries that might be over here. And a friend and I had encountered kombucha and seen it's massive over in the States, and thought, hey, I think this is going to be big. And obviously we were right, it has grown significantly in that time, since sort of 2015, 2016. So that's kind of what it was born from. And Holos as a name, it means wholeness in Greek, or whole in Greek, and that's really the heart of the business. So yes, we have a product with a purpose of helping make us physically whole, but our wider vision is to support survivors of slavery on their own journey into wholeness, and doing that primarily through provision of employment, of paid work, that not only gives kind of an opportunity for economic inclusion, but actually for a sense of belonging as well, which we've discovered is a really critical part of what we're offering. And our primary feedback coming through from the women who work with us is, hey, you know, this is really different to a normal job. I feel part of a team, and just the power of feeling part of a team. So that's kind of our mission. So I'll talk a bit more about the business side. I'll talk a bit more about the impact side, because there's a bit of complexity in there, and then I can share some of the challenges. Does that sound okay? Super. So a bit about Holos. So as I mentioned, kombucha, it's pretty innovative drink in some ways, but it has actually been around for decades, maybe even millennia. It's apparently an ancient kind of warrior's drink that they used to call the elixir of life. So it's been brewed for years and years and years, stemming from different parts around the world, but has grown much more in the UK markets, following on really from the US, from South Africa, from Australia, New Zealand. And what we've really set out to do is, from the start, we said we do not want to be and cannot be a pity buy. You know, we cannot be a business where people think, oh, I like the social purpose there, I'll buy that because I like the impact, and then drink it and don't like it. We knew we had to be an absolutely delicious product. So from the start, we've focused on high quality, great taste, and that has been rewarded. You know, we've got multiple Great Taste Awards. We were selected to be Marks and Spencer's kombucha, which is, you know, they're extremely focused on quality and excellence of product. So that mindset from the start has served us really well. And we've also gone down the line and really focused on our branding, having a brand that is going to sell, that's got that minimalist millennial feel. Because again, people aren't going to pick up a product necessarily because it's got a good purpose. They want to look cool having it. So we've really focused. I'm just sharing this with you because these are really practical elements of kind of setting up a social impact business. It's got to have both. And of course our social cause. And we have two different types of products. We've got our day-based range, as we call it, which is our health focused. You can pick it up in M&S, pick it up in cafes. It's chilled, it's stored in the fridge. It's 330 ml small serve, and you can drink it on the go alongside meals, etc. And then we also have our night ranges, which is more explicitly an alternative to alcohol. So we are trying to create products that people might recognize, but instead of having to drink either an alcoholic beverage or a sugary kind of Coca-Cola, etc., they can make a healthy choice with a kombucha beer, a kombucha cider, or a kombucha sparkling wine. So that's our kind of product range, and you can find us across quite a few different stores, the main one being M&S, lots of online products, and lots of kind of independents as well that we source through wholesalers. So we're kind of all across the UK, and please do spot us if you're out and about, and feel free to try. So a bit more about our social impact, which is of course while you're here. So we do three main things through our social impact. The first of those I've mentioned already, which is about providing paid work for survivors of slavery here in the UK. So quite often when we talk about businesses providing work for survivors of slavery, you're thinking about in the source of origin, so working with the suppliers, but actually we're doing that work right here in the UK. And the way we do that is primarily through three of our teams, through sales, manufacturing, and communications. So the first time we did this was back in 2019, and we did it really as a pilot. We worked with 2 women over 8 weeks and kind of identified what works and what doesn't. We basically did a cross-functional kind of placement and worked with them in partnership to see what's really going to work here in terms of being a successful place for someone to be based that feels safe and supportive, but actually gives meaningful opportunities. And from that, we landed on kind of 2 key roles that we now provide for the women that work with us. So as I said, we had about 12 shifts in 2019. We took that up to 25 shifts in 2021 to 2022 financial year. And then now we're working towards 50 shifts in this financial year, and it will keep growing. So what's interesting, the way that we actually communicate with our investors is we communicate not just our financial goals, but actually our social impact goals and targets as well. And a big focus for us is always about innovation. You know, we are genuinely trying to find and create a blueprint where you can create and run a successful high growth company whilst having impact on the way. So we're always innovating new ways and responding to, exactly as Lucy said, the challenges we're facing en route. So one of the big challenges for us has been, we moved out of London to reduce our factory costs because we just couldn't sustain a factory in London. But of course, outside of London, there's less referral partners, people are living further away, poorer public transport. So that's come with lots of different challenges around actually getting people to the placements with us. So at the moment we are planning a pilot retreat where actually someone will come and stay within the local community and work at Holos whilst receiving transport, accommodation, and some extra kind of wholeness sessions, gardening, food, sustainability alongside that. So we're just always piloting new ways of kind of doing this blueprint to see, well, what can make the biggest impact. The other kind of two aspects to our social impact, the first is quite significant long term. So we always said, you know, whatever happens in the long run, we want to make a big difference with Holos, even if, you know, eventually we are bought, whatever happens, we want to keep that long-term impact. So when we set up the business, we set aside 25% of founders' shares to be donated to what will become the Holos Foundation. And at the point of selling the business, those shares will be monetized in order to actually do some long-term interventions with what will hopefully be, you know, a much more significant amount of money that we can invest, most likely into this local area as well, in terms of offering more long-term kind of wholeness interventions and support. And then finally, you know, we recognise, just like Bramber, we have a voice and we want to use that responsibly. And we also have a product that makes it into people's hands on the shelves who may have never heard that slavery exists actually in the UK today. So on the screen, you've got an example of a bit of innovation we did. We actually did that out of a challenge for a period of time due to, I'm sure many of you are aware of some of the supply chain issues that emerged over the last few years due to COVID. So we had a period of time in clear bottles. So we made the most of that. And we did a loud and clear Slavery Still Exists campaign where we talked about, you know, we used a bottle change to actually talk about slavery and encourage donations through to one of our partners, Bakehouse. So that's an example of using our voice through social media, using some of the talents in the team to actually kind of get the message out there. So that's our impact. And just finally on some challenges and tensions, and I've called it this because you know, you've heard throughout Lucy's talk, you've heard through mine, you know, and we all know that life is just full of trade-offs, and that's what the tension is for us, some trade-offs really, that we're always navigating in this pursuit of purpose and pursuit of profit, and the two don't need to be mutually exclusive, they can be together, but with it comes some need for real decision making. So one of those tensions that we've had from the start is stressful startup versus safe and supportive environment. So let's face it, you know, it's quite well documented how stressful a startup situation can be. You are working at pace, you're working at agility, you know, you're moving fast, and our teams work incredibly hard. And at the same time, we're trying to provide safe and supportive placements that don't place stress and pressure. So that's been a really interesting journey to navigate of what are the roles in our business that are meaningful enough and give a real sense of being in a business and give experience of that without them feeling the load of the pressure that actually some of our other team members might be feeling. So that's been quite an interesting piece. Rigor versus risk. So this is a similar sort of link to this point, but you know, some parts of our business we cannot fail at. We must always get it right. Other parts, it's not quite as rigorous, and actually we can't place someone who might not be able to show up to work one day, or might, for whatever reason, due to previous trauma, due to triggers, might not get everything right on that particular task. We can't place someone in that situation into that kind of role. So there's always this very honest assessment of how much risk can we place in any job that we would provide for a survivor of slavery. And that's not being in any way demeaning, because everyone can have an off day, but it's actually just us being aware and being honest about where's our level of risk in the business and where are the opportunities we can really give to people versus the things that actually need to be done by a specialist who's not on a placement. Predictability versus flexibility. So we have to have a high degree of predictability to maintain our sales forecast, to deliver our manufacturing. It's working like clockwork. But the truth is, you know, lives of survivors can be highly, highly unpredictable, not of anything due to their own cause. Actually, often they're responding to, you know, and many of you guys I've seen where you're from will be well aware of the tensions and pressures that survivors are under in terms of the various court requirements, the various legal requirements, recovering from their trauma, counselling, doctors, college, just all these different requirements in their life, and just the general adjusting to life after having been trafficked and trying to bring a sense of stability. It just means that they can't necessarily be ready to be completely predictable in their work life. So an example of this, you know, we've had a sampling sort of a set of sales roles available that have run over the last couple of years, and sometimes people just last minute haven't been able to come to work. So how do we respond to that? How do we navigate that? We know that's going to happen, and it's more important to us that the person in that role feels respected and honoured than we're like, okay, well, that means it's going to be difficult for our customer relationship. So it's always a tension of kind of where can we actually flex and just say, okay, that's fine, don't worry, and where is it we need predictable attendance, we need people. This one here, cash is king versus impact and cost money, you know, and Lucy referred to this, it can be really expensive to do this work. Generally, we put in place supervisors alongside survivors on placement, so it's going to take extra resource. We pay for travel, it's going to take extra cost. Sometimes the roles are supplementary because we're creating opportunities. It costs money. At the same time, we're a startup, cash is king, and we can't access charitable grants. Not that that's easy, because that's got challenges in itself, as Lucy's talked about. But you know, we have a limited cash, and it's down to how much income we can make and the investment we can get. So that's a real juggle. Employee needs versus placement needs. So I'll speed up. I know I'm taking a long time on this. So basically, employee-wise, you know, we have teams that are working incredibly hard and want to be fully finished in their certain amount of time. Sometimes placements might come on, they need inducting, it might take a bit longer to do a bottling line. The bottling line run might be longer for everyone. That's going to impact the rest of the employees. So we have to weigh that up. What's the kind of, how much can our employees take in terms of extra time or extra effort versus what we're benefiting the placement participant with? Supporting employment versus supporting the whole person. And this links a bit to flexibility. So our priority is supporting the whole person. If that means they can't deliver their whole contract with us because they've found another job, actually we celebrate that. We're like, that's okay, because it's more important you find a full-time job. That's great, but that comes with a need to flex. Belonging versus boundaries. We want to create a sense of belonging. We know there's power in that, but we must hold appropriate boundaries as well. So how do you juggle that? And then talking about what we do, and we've been quite shy about what we do really, because we're trying to safeguard survivors and not make people too aware of where people might be at any one point. These are people who sometimes are at risk still. So that's a real juggle. So that's kind of my synopsis. That's really a brain dump of, this is some of the challenges. There's not many answers in there. We're finding our way, but that's why we call it a blueprint. That's why we call it innovation, because this is what you have to navigate to do it.
You're still smiling, Naomi, so you obviously
it's madness.
No, but you know what, like, I think that's a great point, because it does make it worthwhile. It does. If without the purpose, I think we would have found it hard to keep going. There's been some real challenges on the way for us at Holos in terms of just the last few years and navigating COVID in particular. And it's kept us going.
And how do you find when you're hiring? Because obviously people joining your full-time team,
yeah,
are part of this journey. So it's like you're not just going to have a regular job bottling kombucha, making. I mean, I love kombucha, by the way. It's my mum used to be a chef, so I try all these new things. I've been addicted for many years. But you know, when you're on the hiring, it's like, yes, you're not just going to be making products.
Yeah,
You're going to be helping people. So that's a very different conversation.
Yeah, it is. And not every single role has that direct context. So quite avert when there are roles that do. We generally find it draws people in more. I mean, there's an incredible member of our bottling team. I'm so grateful for her. She's phenomenal. And a key part she plays is what I would just call a culture builder. And, you know, when we have placements in, she is that kind of warm and welcoming support. So actually that adds real sense of purpose to her work. But yeah, it has to be factored in the recruitment.
And that's a good point, because that's what most of us are looking for now is, as you say, purpose in work.
Yeah.
And I think especially, you know, graduates, people leaving university are much more demanding of what an organisation does give back and what they do add to their communities rather than just taking away. And I really like what you said about sort of Cadbury's and these guys. It's a good business has many flavours. Ethically. Lucy, go on. Lucy's got a question.
Yeah, no, it wasn't a question. It was more to just sort of, just highlight what you were saying is you absolutely have to recruit people that understand your mission when you're working in this kind of sector, because if they don't, they infiltrate the culture that you're trying to create, and it reflects badly on everything that you're trying to do. So it's really just to say that is, particularly for us at Bramber as well, it's just really important that you get the right people in the right roles, and sometimes that takes a little bit longer, but it's actually imperative to it being successful, I would say.
Yeah.
And I think, businesses doing good, you know, B Corp is very up there right now. And as you, Naomi, as you said, I imagine you had this conversation right at the beginning of what are we? What should we be? What could we be? And actually being a limited company is a lot easier just to get started, to get moving and get making.
That was the decision. Yeah, because we did explore being a sort of social enterprise, but we knew for FMCG, fast moving consumer goods, you have to be able to invest quite a lot up front in product development and innovation. And you need freedom to be able to spend money on promotions, to be able to get that deal over the line. And it was just going to be too restrictive for us. So we knew we needed that. And we also, you know, we felt the energy of there are people out there who genuinely believe the same as us, that profit and purpose can and should belong together.
Yeah.
And, you know, we have some amazing impact investors that have journeyed with us the whole way through. And have kept us holding to actually both are possible, and just seeing investment in a different way. So we've definitely grateful to be, you know, at this point, I guess, rather than maybe 20 or 30 years ago, when I think it would have been harder to get those kind of impact investors on board. So. And
with M&S, did their decision, I mean, obviously it tastes amazing, but do they also like the background? Was it a win-win for them?
Yeah, I think so. I think that for them, you know, their focus is taste, and, you know, let's face it, that is what M&S are really known for, quality. So that was paramount, most important. But absolutely, you know, they're have a strong anti-slavery stance themselves, and are aligned in terms of their kind of ethics and values too.
And how do you find your placements, the ladies who come to you?
So we have referral partners, and this is actually a really important part of the process for us, because we acknowledge we're only playing a really small part in their overall journey. So all the women we're working with have a caseworker that supports them in some way, and normally receiving counselling, receiving support in terms of the legal processes they're going through. And that means there is kind of a degree of that safeguarding support around it, and kind of shared accountability. So yeah, we have referral partners, a lot of them from London, but we also have some now down here as well. So we work with Migrant Help and Yada down in West Sussex.
So whereabouts is your bottling plant?
So we're based around the kind of Washington area in West Sussex.
Brilliant stuff. We had a question, Lucy, for you around, is Bramber Bakehouse on Just Giving?
We are not on Just Giving. If you want to donate, the best place to go is to our website. I can put a link up on the chat if that's helpful. Probably should be on Just Giving. But...
And Naomi, you've got some quite ambitious plans in terms of your numbers going up. But the challenge is our favourite word of this session, isn't it? What challenges you perceive? You talked about geographical and logistical, getting people. I mean, there's been that also links very nicely into what Lucy, what you were saying, is about how do we support more people in our area if we're bringing them down from London, or is that how can we help people in Sussex?
Yeah, I mean, we're really pleased because we've recently had our first sort of successful manufacturing placement with someone from this area, which is fantastic. So it's going to involve a bit more creativity for us in terms of the transport front, and part of that involves just finding people that can actually literally give lifts. I mean, that's honestly what it comes down to, because the public transport's just too poor, but we knew that. So part of it's going to be about deepening the partnerships with those local organisations. Because we're a business, we can only work with people who've got right to work, so that limits it down a lot. But we legally, that's where we stand on it, and because it's a startup, shadowing just wouldn't work. You know, everyone's contributing financially just in some way, so that it limits our scope of who we can actually work with as well. Which is, and then this kind of the Holos retreat idea, we think that's got some real mileage to it. So we're piloting it in October, and if that's successful, then we plan to kind of run that intermittently through the year, and that will also deliver a lot more placement opportunities. I mean, there's a synergy to it. The more customers we get, the more sales opportunities we get as well. So we're kind of constantly driving the two together to evolve it. How
do you juggle all this as a startup founder? Because you kind of alluded to that on your screen, or the kind of I'm pulled this way, pulled that way.
It's really challenging, and I'll tell you what's kind of helps in some ways. So as a team, we all have quite unique roles. So my role is specifically really around social impact, and I get involved I'm involved obviously in branding and marketing because the two are connected, and so I have a few HRE responsibilities too, but I'm not involved in operations. That's not my space, and actually that helps. So as a team, we can debate and dialogue and discuss and hold for the two different sides of it, whereas there's other people in the team who are very much holding for the commercial and the operational side, and so together we kind of reach that point of view. And it's, you know, what we're always trying to ask is, what's the innovative solution here, you know, and how do we balance? It's often about balancing up the literal cost of doing it. Kind of, can we really afford to do that as well? But it is a big juggle, and it's taken a lot to get here.
Running a startup's hard enough. No one tells you how unglamorous and challenging it is, and you both have. You know, Lucy, you started off with a startup. It's a different flavour, but they're both businesses. You're both trying to be financially viable and grow. There's a question here from Steph actually about working with referring people between the different organisations. How easy is that network? Does it exist in terms of you guys knowing about each other and saying, hey, you've been baking cakes, now come and make some kombucha? Does that happen?
Not yet, but actually, I mean, Naomi and I know each other. I've known each other for, I think it might be coming up to 7 or 8 years before this, actually. So it's quite good that we're on it together. We haven't done, but actually it would be a great opportunity. The issue we have is what Naomi talks about, where they can only employ women who have the right to work. We have a lot of asylum seekers. So if we had women that were suitable for that, I think we would definitely be referring them into Holos, but it's not something that we have done yet. And it might be something that organically happens over the years as the right opportunity, the right person comes about.
Yeah. And there's a lot of scope, I think, in the future as well, you know, both operating sort of East and West Sussex and doing similar stuff. So, but yeah, as Lucy said, you know, we've sort of been, you know, partners in some way in different ways on the same kind of mission, you know, for a long time. So yeah, there's definitely potential there.
And you mentioned before we went live around safe use of technology and the role of technology. I mean, you mentioned Lucy having a WhatsApp group, and it felt like that technology is a bit of a double-edged sword in this sort of space.
Yeah, it is. A lot of the women that come to us have quite limited technology. So for us, it's in the future, how do we expand the programme? How do we deliver perhaps IT skills, the safety around that, looking out for yourself when you're online, that kind of thing. The reason that we're doing WhatsApp over online is because of that. Women don't have access to technology. You know, they're living on £39 a week. Thinking about getting data is probably not one of the biggest priorities for them. Having a laptop certainly isn't. So it's, yeah, just sort of navigating that. But we live in a world where technology is fundamental to what we're doing. So it's how we can contribute to that and help them to understand the importance of that whilst being safe as well.
Yeah. I think because we work with people who tend to be a little further on, in their journeys, they will be more comfortable with email. And that's, we have to do contracts, we have to do invoicing, so we've got all that side that we're dealing with. So it's kind of, and that's partly where the caseworker comes in really important, to be that liaison point and to make sure everything's clear. But it is a challenge because it's a huge barrier to work. And I mean, even for us, for our manufacturing teams, they need to do a food safety level 2. That's online, that's in English. So we can provide the laptop, the computer for them to do it, but even the comfort with the English and reading English, that again is a challenge. But absolutely, they'd be able to do the job. Yes, they would. So it's how do we make it easier for them and provide that support? But the more support you provide, the more it is going to cost the business as well in terms of resource and time. So it's all a balance to try and just do the right thing.
I think Naomi hit the nail on the head there as well with the caseworkers. Like we have similar sort of scheme of referral partners referring women into us, and actually they are the ones that are doing a lot of the work, a lot of the groundwork behind the scenes to get these women ready for a place where they're able to come on a skills-based program or go into employment at Holos. So without them in that piece of the puzzle, it would all fall apart. I think that's the importance of sort of everyone working together, but everyone having their defined roles on a woman's journey. Is they're picked up by the police or by the statutory services, they're put into the NRN system, or sometimes not. Other organisations don't go through that route, but then they're coming to us and then they're going to Holos. It's all part of that journey to independence, and they all play quite an important link.
Yeah.
I'm going to give our audience a little nudge to ask any questions as we're kind of coming into the last section of this. I wanted to ask you both quite a personal question about how you both emotionally process the stories. Yeah, because you are, whether they're making their bread and opening up, you are seeing probably some of the most vulnerable women opening up and needing your help. How do you both deal with that?
I can go first if you want, Naomi. So I guess it's from a personal point of view and from my team's point of view. Personally, I am quite good at trying to switch off. So I'm not, I try not to be a weekend worker. I try not to be an evening worker where I can. That has obviously might flux and, things like that. But I am quite kind of restrictive on that. As a team, we're starting to build in those things now, because again, it's the importance of setting the culture and the tone for the organisation and then reflecting that back to the women you're supporting, right? So we're just starting to think about introducing counselling for our team so that they can go and access that when they want to, but also that piece around sort of reflective practice, clinical supervision for us is really important, because we are towing that line between trauma-informed care, but we're also not psychologists, we're not trained professionals in that, but we are dealing with a lot of stories, a lot of trauma that's sort of being talked about in our sessions. So just having that available for my staff, but also for my volunteers, is really important to make sure that they feel like they've got somewhere to go to offload, really, and to get some advice and clinical supervision where they need it from a trained professional. So yeah, that's very important.
It's interesting for us because we don't ask any questions whatsoever. Kind of one of our big commitments to the charities as well is this is an opportunity for them to completely move forward. So we're not going to be asking any questions about background. All the conversations are going to be future focused, very much that's the space they're coming into. It is that literal opportunity to step forward and move. Now obviously sometimes there have been disclosures, stories shared on occasion, not that often actually, on occasion, and for that, obviously personally for me, this is something very close to my heart. And in my sort of previous work, I guess I would have heard a lot more kind of stories in my work with Sophie Hayes or before that. So it's something that I never want to become desensitized to. I always want to be moved. I always want to be moved. But it is also setting out, really, my role is really about protecting the team around us, having the right kind of safeguarding processes in, having the right disclosure processes in. And we've been really fortunate to have someone involved in our placement process who's got a really fantastic safeguarding background. So a lot of it's been about equipping them, as Lucy says, to be able to navigate any difficult conversations. But yeah, it's for us, we are trying to give that opportunity to move out of that.
Think about the future, think about what they're going, what
well,
optimism.
They're often asked to retell their stories, and that's not our place. Our place is actually to help them create their next story.
Yeah, that's nice, the kind of more of a vision. Steph's put a question here about, Lucy, you mentioned one of the biggest challenges is the perception of slavery to the general public and the fact that it's on our doorsteps, and what can we all do to raise awareness?
Yeah, I mean, Naomi, feel free to pitch in on this as well, because I'm sure you've got some ideas of with what you do. But I feel like people are moving. We need to move away and shift away from that classic sort of charity awareness driven campaign that's very sort of woe is me, this is the story.
You've both mentioned avoiding pity marketing.
Yeah, you know the way that I mean. You'll watch your daytime TV is a classic for it. You'll get an advert up and it's kind of grey background and it's all kind of made to sort of, but people become so desensitized to that because they see it all the time. And I think we need to move away from that and try and connect with people on a heart level so they understand that that could be me. That situation has happened because of X, Y, and Z. Mo Farah, a classic example of it. Yep. People thought, oh my goodness, that's someone I know. I feel like I know him. But actually he had this horrendous traumatic experience and upbringing, and people could really connect with that. And I think that's partly why it was such a big thing when BBC did that documentary. If you haven't seen it, you must watch it. But I think, yeah, just sort of trying to connect with people on a heart level so that they understand what it takes to become a survivor. It's not something that has been decided, like you haven't decided to be in this position. It's something that's been put onto you as a result, mostly of your circumstances that have not had privilege associated with it. And I think if you can do that, then people start to feel really connected with it on a heart level and an emotional level, and they're more likely to do something about it. I don't think we do enough about it. I think we could do more, and perhaps in Sussex there's something that we could do to collaborate together and get people, general public, more engaged in it in innovative ways. I haven't really thought about how that might look, but I do think it's something that we could do.
There's an interesting comment from Chris about local identification investigation and more likely to result in survivors being moved elsewhere. In our experience, survivors who encounter have been moved into the area after being rescued elsewhere. So local awareness is more a discovery issue, and survivor support is often for those other parts of the country. In that way, we need to build awareness for support and recovery issues such as identification, which is in some ways a separate but vital step in the process. We talked a little bit about that with the churches. So somebody might move to a new area, but go, to their flavour of faith and go and be a part of that. That's an easy community when you move to a new area, isn't it? Is to go to the local church. And in our last session, they were very proactive in sort of bringing those people in and looking and supporting them in whatever flavour that may be.
Yeah. I do think there's a distinction, isn't there, between, like what Chris is saying, of seeing people who are being trafficked in Sussex, which will be happening. And raising awareness of the fact that there are survivors out there that need support. The two are separate, but they're also together. So I think there might be sort of a piece that you could do around that would be quite interesting.
I think there's like a broader message really around, are your eyes open? Are you looking around you, or are you just busy like looking in these worlds, right? And to what degree are you looking to include? We just had obviously a whole group of people come over from the Ukraine, just as a very small example of the many different kind of people that have come into the country in need. And it's kind of to what degree are we really playing our part? And I think the more we can start to ask that question, what's in my hand to serve here, what is it I can do, I think the more we'll become aware of issues by the nature of just being curious. And looking at how we can serve and looking at how we can create belonging and community. I think it's a general need, as well. And I think in terms of kind of, I guess, awareness of slavery generally and what you can do, it often is in the power of the purchase as a consumer. And where are you buying from? Do you need to buy? Where are you buying from? What's the kind of track or the kind of footprint of the products that you're buying, and all of that is just so, there's so much power in every pound we spend, and we don't realize how powerful we are. I say this to myself as much, need to pay more attention to that. That's one of the biggest ways we can make a difference.
And we talked about hand car washes and nail bars and some of our usual suspects, which again, I didn't realize before the last session, is there are, if something is too cheap, there is going to be a reason. So, but again, as you say, it's just opening your eyes to that, because it's really easy not to.
Yeah.
And then there are helplines and there are apps, there are ways that you can engage. It doesn't mean you have to go and talk to the person. It doesn't have to be aggressive or conflict. You can speak to people about it.
Yeah. And there are, as you will have talked about, helplines. There are ways to just take that responsibility and ownership ourselves as well, through those helplines, to do our part, I guess. Yeah.
Lucy, you going to say something then?
No, don't worry. I'm in task.
Do we have any more questions from our audience? And thank you all for bearing with us while we had the chat issues at the beginning, and then for coming and getting involved. I mean, I love the fact that making things is bringing people together to have more productive conversations. Both of your websites really filled me with hope when I was researching this before we came on the line. I like the different approaches you've both taken, because as you said, it's not about dwelling on the negatives, it's empowering into the new future and to the positives, because people, they need to move on with their lives, and you're helping them to do that in different ways. And I thought that was it. Yeah, it's brilliant. I can just imagine. I want to come to a cake making class. I can just imagine the energy in that room and the smell in that room. I've got cinnamons but it's just lovely. And Naomi, I really like the balance that I know it's a challenge, but that balance you found of having a business that does good. Those two shouldn't be exclusive. They never have been, really. But as you say, we've been fed the message, isn't it, that it's black or white, and it's really not. And bringing all your energy and experience and your passion into doing it. Yes, it isn't easy, but what is?
Yeah, anything worthwhile is going to be challenging.
Absolutely. And you're creating something that tastes good as well. And again, I like the fact that it's experience based. It's a good experience that does good. We do like that combination as consumers, don't we?
Yeah.
On that note, eat more cake. I think we could end on eat more cake, but also
drink more kombucha.
More cake, more kombucha, and just have your ears and eyes open. This is something that's happening that we'd like to deny is happening in our country. It is happening, but that doesn't mean we can't do something about it. And go, we leave with that thought. And I want to say thank you all very much to our panel, Naomi and Lucy. Thank you so much for joining us today. And Stephanie's just put a note in the chat here about the Possibility Club. All of these, if you've missed any of the sessions that we've done this year or last year, all of those are on the Possibility Club. And also you can pop in there any resources, any numbers, any programs, anything on this topic that you would like to share with the group. Please get involved. It's a conversation that we wanted to start in conjunction, obviously, with the University of Sussex, and one that you can continue with us on the Possibility Club, which is all free to sign up. That's something we run as always possible. But thank you very, very much, and have a good rest of the day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.